Okay, I'm going to be doing a little bit more reading than I normally do, so I had to call in the zany professor. Um, some of these passages are difficult to understand, and so I want you to be able to hear them. So this is going to be Ecclesiastes 6, starting in verse 10. Um, it says this. It says, "Whatever has come to be has already been named, and it is known what man is, and that he is not able to dispute with one stronger than he." Now, this is referring back to Genesis. Now, in Genesis, God names Adam, right? And this shows that God has authority over Adam. Then Adam names the animals, and this shows that man is to have dominion over the animals. And so, we see that in the world. So I want to reread the passage so you'll understand this. Whatever has come to be has already been named, right? So in the past, Adam was already named. That can't be changed. And it is known what man is, and that he is not able to dispute with one stronger than he, who is God, right? So man cannot dispute with God. Now, so when man does dispute with God, how does he do it? Well, he does it with words. Now, if you were to read all of chapter 6, and if you've been paying attention to this series, you understand that Solomon doesn't put a whole lot of stock into words. In fact, he says you'd be better off being quiet. So if you've been following the series, you understand that Solomon is saying that words are kind of useless, especially when it comes to presenting yourself to God. This is, again, why Jesus said we have to be kind of careful with the words we bring to God. Again, there's no like hard and fast rules to prayer on the one hand. On the other hand, as you grow as a Christian and experience life more and come to know more about God, it will change how you approach God. And so silence before God is important because, as Jesus himself said, God already knows what you need. So a great abundance of words isn't necessary. So whatever has come to be has already been named, right? So God has dominion over man, and it is known what man is, and that he is not able to dispute with one stronger than he. The more words, the more vanity. And what is the advantage to man, right? So the more words that man heaps up to God, there's no advantage. Nothing's going to change. You're not going to name God. God names you. For who knows what is good for man while he lives the few days of his vain life, which he passes like a shadow? For who can tell man what will be after him under the sun? So man can't look at the future and say, here's the way this is all going to play out. If he could do that, imagine how everything would change, right? The very nature of being would be very different for us. So he doesn't know what comes after him. And he already knows his lot in life and his position towards God, that God is greater than him, stronger than him. There's absolutely nothing man can do to overcome God's will. And that the world, I apologize for this focus, it's acting really nuts. There's really not much I can do about it. I don't know why it keeps doing that. Sorry. And so there's no advantage to heaping up more words. And here's the thing, he reminds us that our life is vanity to begin with. Without God, our life is vain anyway. So, as I said very early in this series, that, well, if God loves me, doesn't he want me to be happy? And the answer is no. God wants you to have an eternal goodness. And since God knows that eternal goodness and you don't, you're at the mercy of God to provide the answers, which he did through his son. And what I said in my sermon this past Sunday, and what we'll get into here in chapter 7, which I don't think I'll have time to go over the whole thing, is absolutely fascinating. What I said was, so all of what Solomon's talking about here, while true and wise, is also theoretical, right? I mean, you could do these wise things and they'll benefit you, but that doesn't mean you won't get in a car wreck and die, even if you've been wise, which Solomon addresses, right? He says you could die and a fool takes over where you left off. And so life itself, even for the wise, is ultimately vain. But what Jesus did is he took the theoretical and made it concrete. So while you may die a physical death, the spiritual death, if you are one with Christ, is ensured to be benefit, that you won't experience a spiritual death. You're ensured to be okay. All right? So Jesus offers assurances where the best Solomon can offer is theories. And so Jesus makes these, and the funny thing is the good news, the word gospel means good news, is concrete due to the resurrection. So these may be, you may be hearing some depressing and bad things here. The series has been depressing. Even my titles for the series have ultimately been depressing. But Jesus offers a response that reverses all of that. Okay? And so the believer can live a different life. I forgot, I don't have much time left because of the power. This could cut out at any time. I apologize if that happens. So let's go to chapter 7. It says, a good name is better than precious ointment, and the day of death than the day of birth. Is it better to go to the house of mourning than to go to a house of feasting? For this is the end of all mankind, and the living will lay it to heart. All right, so here he's saying this. If you wear perfume, it benefits you to the people you meet. At this time, it might have even meant you were rich. I'm not sure. But you could meet with someone and they go, well, this person must be wealthy, or they smell good, and this would leave a good impression. But how much better would it be to have a good name? If your name precedes you in a positive way, that can go out to everyone before you ever even meet them. So you may not have perfume, but if you have a good name, when you utter your name and people know who you are, and they know you can be trusted and so forth, then that can be better than any way you can present yourself. I met a mechanic close to where I live, and she was a con artist. We caught her red-handed in multiple lies. How many people do you think I said should go to that mechanic? None. Not a one. But where I grew up, we had a guy named Jim. I never saw Jim outside of the context of his shop. But, you know, they attach these machines to your car to make an analysis that costs over $100. Jim would use a stethoscope and listen to certain parts of the engine. He could tell. And he did everything he could to save you money and time. Everybody who had a car problem, if I liked them, what did I do? I sent them to Jim. The day Jim retired was depressing, right? Because how do you find a mechanic that's honest? This guy was amazing. And his lot was huge and full of cars all the time. His name just preceded him. So it would be better to have a good name. Okay, but that's not exactly what Solomon's talking about. What he's talking about is this. There's a time for everything, right? A time for gladness, a time for celebration, a time for laughter. But then there's a time for negative things, whether we like it or not. And so he's not saying here that a time for laughter is inherently bad. What he's saying is this: when it comes to arriving at meaning in life, when it comes to having good thing, the ultimate goodness, ultimate meaning, you are better off at a funeral than a comedy club. He calls it the house of mirth. You're better off at a funeral home than a comedy club, because a funeral home is where you have to reflect on life. You have to ask big ticket questions. You don't have an option. You can go there and pretend like things aren't the way they are, but you'll be fooling yourself. So he says this: sorrow is better than laughter, for by sadness of face the heart is made glad. The heart of the wise is in the house of mourning, but the heart of fools is in the house of mirth. It's a comedy club, basically. A place where there's laughter and spirits, but it's over when you leave. Whereas sadness can bring about change, real solid, lasting change, okay? It is better for man to hear the rebuke of the wise than to hear the song of fools. For as the crackling of thorns under a pot is being smashed down and just how effective is a thorn to keep you from whatever it's protecting if it's been smashed down in a pot, right? Nothing. It wouldn't be. For the crackling of thorns under a pot, so is the laughter of fools. This also is vanity. So their laughter offers them no results in the end. It's just kind of an escape. Whereas sadness yields a lifetime of great results, a lifetime of wisdom, and would point one ultimately, we would say as Christians, to Jesus Christ, that he resolves these problems, that they're not just theoretical. Now, in verse 7, he says this, surely oppression drives the wise into madness, and a bribe corrupts the heart. Better is the end of a thing than its beginning, and the patient in spirit is better than the proud in spirit. Be not quick in your spirit to become angry, for anger lodges in the bosom of fools. Say not, where were the former days, better than these? For it is not from wisdom that you ask this. Now what he's saying is this. Now they had great respect for their elders at this time, where we don't, at least in America. And when they saw that you were getting to the end of life, you had accrued more wisdom. This is why when I meet men older than me that act like children, I can't even look at them. We used to have this guy that we worked with. He was much older than me that thought everyone was paying attention to him all the time. So he would do these silly little dances and try to make everybody laugh. And I just couldn't stand it. I just ignored the guy. And he could tell I just didn't want to have anything to do with him. And the reason why is I just couldn't believe a guy had gotten this age and remained so silly. And a lot of people would have thought, well, don't you want to be young at heart? No, I don't. No. I remember thinking, I don't want to become a crotchety old man. But here's the thing. Sorry, I keep doing this with my glasses. Solomon is saying you'd be better off being a sad person that understands the gravity of life than this silly heart that just goes into oblivion with no clue whatsoever. Frivolous happy. Have you ever met someone who makes a joke out of everything? You never learn anything from people like that. It's everything's a joke all the time. I have a guy I work with, everything is a joke. I've also noticed that people who do this are never funny. They're never funny. They operate in bulk, right? They might have a funny joke out of a million because you're going to hit the target eventually. But generally, they interrupt your conversations, they're rude, and they don't offer you anything. You don't learn anything from these people. And Solomon is saying, you get to the end of your life, it's much better, because what's really going to happen to someone who's wise is they're going to experience sadness, and by the end of their life, they'll have it better. So these people who walk around saying, man, those former days were so much better. This was better, and that was better. I was younger, I had more energy, blah, 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 blah. He would say, but what happened to that wisdom that you accrued? Because you had all that time period, from when you were young to now, you would have accrued wisdom. How could this possibly be better than this? So the wise know that the latter years are better because the latter years are full of wisdom. Finally, verse 11, wisdom is good with an inheritance, an advantage to those who see the sun. For the protection of wisdom is like the protection of money, and the advantage of knowledge is that wisdom preserves the life of him who has it. Consider the works of God. This goes back to the beginning. Who can make straight what he has made crooked? What's he talking about? That life itself, God has made crooked. You can't make it straight by amusement and pretending everything's fine and cracking wise all the time. I love that old man term. Cracking wise all the time. You're not going to change a thing. It'd be better to take in the reality that God is offering and say, okay, where's the meaning in all of this? Fortunately for us, God has offered a definitive, concrete answer to that question, and it resides in his Son, Jesus Christ.